Okay, so we're looking at behaviourism now. Behaviourism is one of our perspectives. We have two perspectives to look at, and these are the paradigms of psychology. They're the big subjects in psychology, the sort of fundamental ones that have stayed. Now, the assumptions of behaviourism, the first one is tabula rasa. This means we are born a blank slate and nearly all our behaviour is learned. Now, this is with the exception of a few inborn reflexes and instincts, but behaviourists believe that we are born with nothing and the environment and social interaction imprints on us, and that's who we are. A second assumption is that animals and humans learn in the same way, therefore we should be making assumptions, generalizations from one species to another. And the third assumption is that the mind is irrelevant. You can't see it, you can't measure it, therefore it's not important in understanding why we behave the way we do. So how do children learn is what we'll be looking at, and we'll be looking at learning theories. The first learning theory we'll look at is classical conditioning by Pavlov. Now, he was investigating the salivatory reflex in dogs, and the salivatory reflex is a response which occurs automatically when food was placed on the tongues of dogs. He noticed that the dog salivated in response to anything associated with feeding and routine, for example, the dish or the person. So he investigated whether ringing a bell prior to feeding would condition the dogs to salivate in response to the bell. And what he found was that dogs learned by association that the bell meant that food would come. The second learning theory we'll look at is operant conditioning by Skinner. And now we'll know this better as positive and negative reinforcement, so things like the naughty stickers for doing well. Now, Skinner investigated and came up with his learning theory of operant conditioning by half-starving pigeons and rats and popping them in what they call a Skinner box. The rat or the pigeon was rewarded every time they pecked or touched the green button, not rewarded every time they pressed the red one. He could get them to turn round, he could get them to peck once or twice, and if they got food, they'd repeat the behaviour. If they didn't get food, they wouldn't repeat the behaviour. So what he showed there was positive, negative reinforcement, the positive reinforcement being the food for the animal. The third theory of learning we'll look at is social learning theory by Bandura, and he was studying aggression in children, and he said that there's no feedback needed for the children, that they learn through observation, through looking at role models and the consequences of their actions and deciding, not consciously, but deciding whether they would imitate their behaviour. For example, if children observe a naughty child not being punished and in fact benefiting from their action through teacher attention, they're likely to copy that. Okay, so the strengths of behaviourism is that it's scientific, so we can establish cause and effect. It provides very detailed, good evidence for the nature-nurture debate, and that it's highly useful in explaining gaming behaviour, children's aggression, explaining irrational as well through positive and negative reinforcement. The weaknesses of that is that it has low external and ecological validity because it relies on scientific methodology. It's quite reductionist because it applies the flag for nurture and very much not for nature. And some of the ethical issues dealing with animals and children, the ethical issues aren't always great in behaviourism. Okay, so that's our first of two perspectives.